Last night's episode of Steven's late-night show spiraled into chaos in what might go down as one of the most controversial and emotionally charged interviews in late-night television history. The guest? Billionaire tech titan Elon Musk. The moment? A spontaneous and fiery on-air clash that left the live audience in stunned silence and social media in meltdown before the episode had even finished airing. It all started as expected. The lights dimmed, the jazz band played its cheerful riff, and Steven walked out to a wave of applause. After some light banter and the usual monologue, he introduced Elon Musk with a classic deadpan. "You know him as the man trying to launch us into space, colonize Mars, reinvent cars, merge our brains with machines, and tank Twitter in record time. Please welcome Elon Musk." The audience laughed, half at the joke, half at the growing sense that this interview might not be just another casual chat with a celebrity CEO. Elon walked out with a slight smile, seemingly unfazed, wearing a sharp black jacket over a plain gray tee. He waved modestly, shook Steven's hand, and sat down. The opening questions were innocuous. A bit about Tesla's upcoming robotaxi project, Neuralink's controversial trials, and his latest AI endeavor. But tension began brewing beneath the surface, like gasoline collecting around a spark. Things took a turn when Steven shifted the conversation. "You know, Elon," Steven said, leaning forward, voice flattening into a more serious tone, "you've been in the news a lot lately for reasons that have nothing to do with rockets or cars. Your daughter, formerly your son, has publicly distanced herself from you. She's made it clear she wants nothing to do with the Musk name. And I think what a lot of people want to know is, why? Why can't you just respect her identity?" Elon's smile vanished. He adjusted in his seat, eyes narrowing. Steven didn't wait for a response. "Is it because you're holding on to some outdated, archaic view of the world? Is that it? Are you just another rich, powerful man who thinks the world needs to conform to his beliefs? Because that's what it looks like." The studio grew. Still, you could hear a pin drop. Elon tilted his head, surprised by the abrupt aggression. "That's a very personal accusation," he said, his voice calm but tight. "And frankly, not an accurate one." Steven pressed on, visibly emboldened. "You can pretend to be a visionary. You can talk about going to Mars, but you can't even support your own child when she needs you to see her for who she is. That's not innovation. That's regression. That's fear. And let's be honest, Elon, is this really about her? Or is it about you not being able to control the narrative anymore?" The crowd gave a tense, uncomfortable laugh, the kind that doesn't know whether it's allowed. Elon leaned back, processing. He nodded slowly, his jaw clenched. "So, let me get this straight," he began. "You're using your platform, under the guise of entertainment, to publicly accuse me of being transphobic. With zero understanding of the complexity of the situation," Steven shrugged. "I'm using my platform to ask questions people are too afraid to ask. And if the answer is ugly, maybe that's on you." What had started as an interview had morphed into a televised confrontation. Musk's tone dropped lower. "You know nothing about the pain of watching someone you love completely vanish into a belief system that treats dissent like a crime. You don't know what it's like to see your child indoctrinated, told that her own father is the enemy simply because he asked questions, because he wasn't woke enough." Steven interrupted again, but Elon raised a hand. Not to silence, but to make it clear he wasn't finished. "I'm not here to debate identity politics with a comedian," Elon added. "I'm here to discuss ideas, not get ambushed with sensationalism designed for internet outrage." The crowd was split. A few claps, a few awkward chuckles, a whole lot of silence. Steven, sensing he was losing the audience's unified approval, doubled down. "I'm not trying to be sensational, Elon, but if you're afraid to call yourself out on your own bias, maybe someone else has to." Elon smiled, but it wasn't warm. The real bias, he said, is pretending that one side of a conversation is automatically moral and the other automatically evil. Stephen leaned back in his chair. So you're saying you're the victim? Elon looked at him, dead serious. No, I'm saying we all are. The tension now sat on the room like weight, heavy, breathless. There was no laughter, no music cues. Just two men staring each other down. Stephen flipped the cue card in his hand. You know, I thought you were smarter than this. Elon chuckled, but it was dry. That's the problem with people like you. You think intelligence is agreeing with you? Stephen, undeterred, took a new angle. Or maybe I just think intelligence means understanding progress, and it looks like you're still stuck in the past, wrapped in some Victorian dad fantasy, where your kid exists just to mirror your values. Elon didn't blink. You're playing a very dangerous game, Stephen. Not just with me, but with truth. The crowd stirred again, whispering. The silence had turned to murmurs. Something was coming. Stephen grinned, attempting to pivot. Let's talk about Twitter. But Elon cut him off, leaning forward now, voice icy and deliberate. No, let's talk about what happens when woke isn't about kindness anymore. When it becomes doctrine. When it becomes weaponized. When it convinces your child you're a villain just for asking questions. Let's talk about that. And then he paused. The silence returned, louder than ever. Stephen tried to regain control, shifting in his seat, but Elon didn't let go of the moment. And just like that, the temperature in the room dropped. This wasn't an interview anymore. It was war. The moment hung there, thick and still, as if time itself had paused to bear witness. Elon's eyes didn't flinch. He didn't shift in his seat. He stared straight through Stephen, who now leaned back in his chair, clearly recalibrating. This wasn't how it was supposed to go. Musk was supposed to get flustered, defensive. Instead, he had leaned in, not just physically, but emotionally, intellectually. And he wasn't backing down. Stephen took a breath, almost imperceptibly. Elon, he said, voice tinged now with a forced calm, when you talk about woke culture as something dangerous, you're conveniently ignoring the lives it protects. The marginalized people it uplifts. Maybe your daughter didn't leave you because of some ideological cult. Maybe she left you because you refused to evolve. That struck a nerve. Elon's expression shifted. For the first time, something broke through his composure. Not anger, but grief. My daughter, he began slowly, his voice low, raw, was the most brilliant, curious child I've ever known. Before the world told her who she should be, she was vibrant. She asked questions that stunned scientists. She wanted to build things, to break things, to understand the cosmos. She was alive. He paused, and the audience, previously fidgeting, sat frozen. But then came the labels, the pressure, the binary thinking disguised as tolerance, the therapists who told her I was a threat, the online forums that taught her to hate me before she even understood why. And I watched her slip away. Not from trans identity, not from being true to herself, but from the ideology that said any disagreement, any nuance, was bigotry. Stephen opened his mouth, but no words came. Elon went on. This isn't about trans people. This is about authoritarian thinking wrapped in rainbow flags. This is about systems that demand loyalty to dogma, not truth. You say I'm clinging to old traditions, but the truth is, I lost my son. The word hit hard. Son. It echoed in the silence like a gunshot. Elon caught it, closed his eyes for a beat, and corrected himself. Daughter, now. But not because I was allowed to love her through that transition, because I wasn't given a choice. He looked up again. The woke mind virus isn't just a slogan, Stephen. It's a very real phenomenon, where people, especially young people, are told that identity must come with an enemy. That authenticity requires a villain. And when there's no villain, one is created, usually out of parents. Stephen stiffened. You're saying your child was brainwashed? I'm saying, Elon replied, steady and unwavering, that when a belief system discourages dialogue, criminalizes doubt, and weaponizes shame, that's not liberation, that's control. A hush settled across the studio like fog on a battlefield. Stephen shifted forward, voice rising again. You think you're being profound, but what you're really doing is undermining the very real pain people experience, just trying to exist. And what you're doing, Elon countered, his voice now trembling ever so slightly, is pretending that only one kind of pain matters, that only one story deserves to be told, that only your truth is truth. He leaned back slightly, his voice softening. Do you know what it's like to be told day after day that you're a monster? Not for what you've done, but for the questions you asked? For the hesitation you felt when your child said, I want to change everything about who I am? And when you said, are you sure? That question alone made you the villain. For a flicker of a moment, Stephen seemed to falter. His eyes dropped to his cue cards, but they looked like foreign objects now, props for a show that had transformed into something else entirely. I'm not anti-anything, Elon said. I'm anti-lie. And the biggest lie we've told ourselves is that compassion means compliance, that love means silence. The audience remained motionless. It wasn't just drama anymore. It was devastation. Stephen tried to retake control. This isn't therapy, Elon. It's a talk show. Elon raised an eyebrow. And yet you brought my child into this. You chose the topic. You wanted the confrontation. You wanted the soundbite. Now that it doesn't serve your narrative, you want to pivot? Stephen's face flushed. You're spinning it. You're making yourself the victim so you don't have to answer the question. What question? Elon shot back. The one you already answered for me? That I'm transphobic? That I'm a bad father because I won't bend the knee to your ideological purity test? Then, for the first time, Elon's voice cracked. Just slightly. I would give my life for my child, but I will not give my mind. A single tear slid down his cheek. He didn't wipe it away. Stephen stared, stunned. The audience, sensing something irreversibly real, didn't move. I have been called everything, Elon continued. Fascist, Nazi, bigot, misogynist, all because I dared to say, what if we're going too far, too fast? I am not afraid of change. I'm building the future. But when change becomes coercion, when questioning becomes crime, we lose the very soul of what makes us human. He paused again, letting the words breathe. I didn't lose my daughter to who she is. I lost her to a system that told her I was unworthy of love because I disagreed. Stephen exhaled sharply. This is dangerous rhetoric. No, Elon said. It's the truth you're afraid to hear. And then it happened. The most surreal moment of the night. Stephen stood up from his chair. The move was subtle, slow, not theatrical, but final. He adjusted his blazer, looked off camera, then back to Elon. I think that's enough, he said, the words cutting through the air like a blade. This interview is over. Elon looked at him, eyes still misty, then stood as well. There was no shouting, no dramatic exit line, just a silence that spoke louder than anything either of them could say. Stephen didn't thank him for coming. Elon didn't wait for the cameras to cut. He turned and walked off the stage, and the audience, unsure whether to clap or cry, sat still, caught in the wake of something much bigger than they had bargained for. Elon Musk's footsteps echoed as he disappeared behind the curtain, leaving the stage and Stephen beneath the unforgiving glare of the studio lights. For a moment the cameras stayed locked on Stephen's face, not smiling, not mocking, just blank. He blinked as if returning from something deeper than television. There was no music to buffer the tension, no clever one-liner to break the silence, just the raw, unedited aftermath of a confrontation that no one had expected would go that far. In the control room, producers scrambled. Stage managers whispered frantically into earpieces. The floor directors signaled the crew to cut to commercial, but Steven didn't move. He remained standing, gazing into the empty seat where Elon had sat just moments before, his fingers twitching slightly as if gripping onto an invisible thread of control that had long since unraveled. When the show returned, from break there was no band, no laugh track. The lights were dimmed slightly. Steven sat again, his face composed but pale. "Well," he said into the camera, forcing a smile that didn't quite reach his eyes. "That got intense?" A few in the audience chuckled, nervously. Steven shifted in his chair. "Look, this is a comedy show. We talk politics, yes, we talk culture, but we're not here to be cruel." The camera pushed in slowly. "I know a lot of you are watching this thinking, did Steven go too far? Maybe I did. Maybe I asked questions that struck too close to home. Maybe I said things that weren't mine to say. And maybe Elon Musk said some things that made a lot of people uncomfortable." He paused, swallowed, continued. "But discomfort isn't always bad. Sometimes that's where the truth lives." The audience clapped this time, but not with full conviction. It was a polite applause, an attempt to return to normalcy. But something about the room had changed. The air was heavier. The walls echoed, with the words no one had expected to be said on a stage built for jokes and applause. Backstage, Elon Musk stood in the shadows of the studio hallway. Not pacing, not raging, just still. A single producer approached him cautiously, headset slung over one ear, hands up like he was approaching a wild animal. Mr. Musk," he said carefully, "we can escort you out the back if you prefer. Avoid the press." Elon turned to him slowly. His face was calm again, unreadable. "No need," he replied. "Let them talk." He walked past the producer and down the hallway with a deliberate, almost graceful certainty. Not storming out in anger, but stepping away from a place that could no longer contain him. He paused only once, in front of a dressing room mirror, and stared at his own reflection, not with vanity, not with regret, but with something closer to grief. He wiped the last trace of a tear from his cheek and whispered to himself, "Let them talk." By the time the credits rolled on Steven's late-night show, social media had already exploded. Clips of the confrontation hit millions of views within the hour. Hashtags like Wunsch Musk v. Steven, Woke Mind Virus, and Late Night Meltdown trended across platforms. Some hailed Steven as a brave voice holding power to account. Others called him a bully who used his platform to shame a grieving father. But no one could deny the interview had pierced something real. It had shattered the surface of the safe, performative culture war discourse and exposed the raw nerves underneath. It wasn't just about pronouns or parenting. It was about identity, ideology, power, pain, and the cost of being wrong, or simply misunderstood, in a world that no longer allowed for it. For Steven, the fallout was swift. Op-eds debated whether the segment was irresponsible or righteous. Activists clashed. Think pieces flooded in. Celebrities weighed in on both sides, some defending the host, others expressing sympathy for Elon. Even other late-night hosts took jabs or offered solidarity. But privately, inside the polished halls of his studio office, Steven sat alone that night, staring at the segment on replay. Again and again he watched Elon's face. The controlled emotion, the breaking voice, the tear that slipped through a wall of intellect and ego. He didn't feel triumphant. He didn't feel vindicated. He felt off-center because somewhere, in the back of his mind, beyond the applause, beyond the moral grandstanding, A voice whispered something terrifying and true. Maybe he wasn't entirely wrong. And for Elon, the days that followed didn't dull the impact. He didn't issue a follow-up tweet. He didn't release a statement. He didn't fan the flames. He let the world talk. But privately, behind closed doors, the moment became a turning point, not for his public persona, but for his private resolve. He began funding a new initiative. Not against trans people, not against identity, but against ideological coercion of all kinds. An effort to reintroduce nuance into public discourse. To teach people, especially young people, that love and disagreement could coexist. That asking questions didn't make you evil. That confusion wasn't failure. He named it Vera Nova, Latin for a new truth. And while the media cycle eventually moved on, as it always does, that night on Stephen's late-night show remained one of those rare cultural fissures where performance gave way to something authentic. Not because either man won, but because neither walked away unchanged. The final viral clip was not the shouting, not the tear, not the exit. It was a quiet moment, screen faded to black, where Elon's voice echoed one last time, "I would give my life for my child, but I will not give my mind." It lingered like a challenge, not to Stephen, not even to his daughter, but to a world that demands total allegiance when maybe what it really needs is honesty. The world didn't end that night, but maybe something else did. A mask, a pretense, a game, and maybe, just maybe, something better began to take its place.